Welcome back to the Get Validated podcast. I am your host, Fallon Jordan, your boundary setting cheerleader, and all things related to self-love, brain health, spirituality, all of the yum yums. And I am so grateful to have my friend and colleague, Larry Salvatoriello here. Thank you so much for being here, Larry.
Thank you for having me. And I will say you said my last name properly because I don't think you've ever had to say it out loud.
We've had, oh God, probably hundreds of conversations.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's just so funny because I forgot to send you the Zoom link. Totally forgot to do that. And I've never sent your email out. And that's just one of the things that I think is so beautiful is like when you're with your soul family, like some of those bigger picture, especially you and I coming from like the corporate background, like every duck has to be in a row and there's like an SOP. And it's like when you're with your people, like some of that stuff just like falls away and is just like not important because we ended up doing exactly what we need to do, which is being here together right now.
It's all about balance. This is true.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about Larry is that he introduced me to the concept of sacred geometry. And I look at my little diagram every day. And the more that I learn about ancient Egypt and the Akasha and just the use of symbolism and like actual symbols when you're using some of these spiritual practices that I'm a big fan of. And if someone hasn't heard of sacred geometry, I kind of wanted them to know what that is because we talk about it a lot.
Well, the way, so it's interesting that we're going to jump into the geometry aspect of it, because I think that the journey to getting to geometry was through my own kind of curiosity of life. And I think that the best way that I like to describe geometry, and the particular one that I've been studying, is biogeometry. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I am an expert on it or know it really well at all. I do practice it. But it's really about subtle energies and how shape and information interacts with each other, and then what does that represent from a non-visual perspective in the world, right? And actually, interestingly enough, in the physical world, right? So there's energy and information that are kind of going through shape, and then things are manifesting from that, right? And there are things that we can see and there are things that we can't see. And so I think sacred geometry has a lot to do with how, ancient Egypt and others have evolved over time to use more of their right brain, I guess you can say, to be in tune with the subtle energies of the world, and using shape to help heal and hone in energy and other things of that nature, right? I am a beginner at this because of interest, but I can see the power of what that ancient art is and how powerful it is. And I'm actually hopeful that it actually becomes more prevalent in the world today, because I think people look at that and they're like, oh yeah, that was like Egypt and stuff. And it's like, well, there's a lot of insight and truth that could be taught and learned from all that kind of stuff.
100%. And I know when you like, I don't know if you call it running, I think of like running a chart, but when you were running my, whatever you want to call it, I mean, it was really powerful because I was drawing the symbols on my skin and like that, bonded me to the ancient codes, and it made a huge difference. And I'm just realizing that I haven't done that in a while, but I kind of told myself that I was going to use those markings at some point. Once my best friend relieved me of, I have like a timestamp of like not making impulsive decisions, and the tattoo was the biggest one. But I knew that like these were the markings that I wanted to use as kind of like a band, kind of like as a Wonder Woman cuff. But it was really, really helpful. And I was going through some really dark, heavy stuff then, and Archer agrees. And you helped me a lot with that.
Well, I'm glad I was able to be of assistance in some way.
Yeah. And then when people come over and they see this, like, what is that? I'm like, it's me. And they're like, what? I'm like, I can't explain it. It's just me. Me is a symbol.
Well, there's a lot that we can't feel, touch, or see that is going on in our lives that impact us, right? And I think that maybe this is an interesting segue into points of the conversation, is that I think we just try too much to focus on things in silos, as well as things that we can see and calculate or compute in some way, right? And I think that we really need to, I know holistic is a word that's used a lot nowadays, and it's probably lost a lot of its true meaning, but in the grand scheme of it all, everything is interconnected, right? And every little thing that is done, from the environment that you're in and how you interact with the sun and what your body does with that, and then taking in food and water and sleep and all these things impact you in a way that you'd be mind blown if you really broke it down to understand it. And what's even better about that is I still think there's a lot that we don't even know, right? And that's the curiosity that I have been committed to in my life, and I've really doubled down on it, especially over the last 4 years, to really start to explore what is not known out there, or not necessarily seen or considered a truth, and even potentially undoing or challenging truths that have been portrayed to us, right? And interestingly enough, here I am looking at geometry, right, or sacred geometry, which the particular one I'm talking about is biogeometry. Dr. Abraham Kareem, just a brilliant mind, and I am grateful for his books and things that are there. I think it begs the question is, how did I get here, and what does that mean for anyone else who's maybe listening to this, right? I think that a long time ago, there was some moments in my life that forced me to decide either I'm going to take action or I'm not, right? I'm either going to just kind of give up and give in to whatever was going on in my life, or I was going to actually take action and try to change things. And luckily for me, there was enough willpower that I committed to changing. I started to really look at my life, and just backstory, right? So I'm an only child, lost a lot of loved ones, a lot of family members in my early teens. My first time dealing with death was a really tough one. That, really opened up a lot of questions and a can of worms for me. First girlfriend I ever had, I lost in a car crash. My parents then got divorced after that. Felt alone, started dealing with tons of anxiety. Went off to college, and I dreamed I was going to be a Major League Baseball player, and that all came crashing down. I had injuries and all this other stuff. Started finding myself just getting out of shape and overweight, and just, I wasn't vibrant in any way, shape, or form. And then I had a nervous breakdown when I was 21, I guess you can say. And it was that point that I knew I need to get help, and I did. And I went, and I am a person who would say that pharmaceuticals have their purpose when it's needed, right? And I, through our discussions through, brain health and the Aiming Clinic and all the other stuff, right? What's the first rule of thumb, right? It's we don't just jump to that conclusion yet. We start and let's look at things first, and let's maybe try some other things before we decide to take a narcotic or a different type of pharmaceutical and stuff. So, but I was pretty bad. And so I ended up going on Paxil, and it helped me. It helped me tremendously. It gave me a level of clarity that at least I was able to take it for the time that I did take it, to start on a path that, I was going on, and which was to well-being. And that led me to, having a good job, and, very career oriented, and, finding who ended up being my wife, and having children, and all these wonderful things. And then that made me think, well, I'm in a really good place. Do I need this anymore? Right. And so I stopped taking the pharmaceutical stuff. And simultaneously with that, I started down a path of entrepreneurship. And I don't want to, do a ton of, I can tend to have a little bit of word vomit when it comes to telling stories, but it's what I do.
Love it.
I tell stories. And during the entrepreneurial journey and starting what ended up being and exists today, a multi-million-dollar company. Actually, we just Arcus, which is a Salesforce consulting firm, they just hit over 50 million in sales all time, which is a pretty amazing feat.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so really, really exciting accomplishment. And I ran sales for the majority of my day-to-day there. And I started to really study health and wellness, and I started getting into this whole thing. And that put me on this journey of something that really started to spark my curiosity and interest, because I started to question, was health outside of me, or do I have everything I need? Like, what's really going on here, right? Because like, why am I taking a pill to feel normal, right? What's going on? And what I started to realize, and kind of fast forward to when COVID happened, was I just kind of did all these things kind of in the background. Like I was being a head of sales and president of Arcus, being a dad, being a husband, doing the things that I was doing, but in my little corner, I was trying to figure out how to be healthy, and started to study the Tony Robbinsons and the Deepoks and meditations and you name it, like all these different avenues of health, and got connected with a lot of really great people. And when COVID hit, I realized that there's a lot of things out there in our world that we can't control. Right. And life is going to throw things at us all the time. And, there's a lot that we also don't know. Right. As I mentioned earlier. And what I realized was at that moment was me keeping all this stuff inside and kind of hidden from everyone. I wasn't really doing a good service to the world. And also I was passionate about it, right? So I started really thinking about my children and started saying, well, what is going to be kind of my legacy around that? And I think what shifted inside of me is, and this is kind of where conversations I started having with you and kind of led, I guess, to coming on this podcast is, what is it that I have learned over these years? I'm 46 years old now, over the last 25 years, let's just say, since the nervous breakdown that I had many moons ago. What is it that I would want to pass down to my children and then others that they can take for life? And as I started to contemplate that, I started to realize that the first point was, I, as a child, took what was said to me, and no bad blood or issues with my parents or my teachers or things like that, but I feel like I was really conditioned to hear what was being taught to me and told to me as it was truth.
Right.
And it was the truth that I needed to accept. Right. And when I started to look at that, I started to see that, man, like everything that I believe in was because someone else told me. And I never really took the time to really ask the question, why? And I think a lot of people in the world today are asking a lot of questions, or at least they're kind of at that high level of question. And yeah. I think what the biggest lesson is, they need to dig deep. They need to dig deeper into what is it that they truly believe. Because until you can start to investigate that, it's really, really hard to take action. It's really hard to make changes, right? You might be able to get up, like if let's say you have a health issue, like you might be able to get yourself to go to the gym, but what's going to keep you going to the gym, right? What's going to make you see the value in going to, let's just say, a gym, or, you know, running, or whatever floats your boat when it comes to, you know, movement activities, right? And so I started to see this, and I started to say, well, okay, well, what did I do to like get to the place where I'm at? And as I started to challenge my beliefs, which was a big thing, and seeing, you know, how I was motivated to do things because I was luckily being pushed by the wrong things, but I realized there was some insight in all this. And it really was about everyone's life is bespoke to them, right? However you decide to, what your interests are, what your passion is, what health is for you. Like there's many different ways to look at things. I think there's some fundamentals of health, but it's like, you know, everyone looks at health. It's like, oh, it's like nutrition. So it's like, okay, well, I have to decide. I'm either going to be a vegan, or I'm going to be a meat guy or girl, or I'm going to be like whatever. Right. And then it's like, well, you need to exercise. Right. But the nutrition side is separate from and it's like, no. It's 100% holistic. And the truth of the matter is, everyone needs to do their own research in the different things and merge it all together. So it starts with what I like to call kind of ABCs of life, which starts with the big A, which is awareness, right? It's looking at your internal environment and it's looking at your external environment. And then from there, finding commitment to your health, commitment to being curious about life, commitment to your relationships, and commitment to your belief systems, which I think many people, that's a big question mark.
100%.
Right? Finding discipline, right? My successes in business, everything were rooted in discipline, right? You have to do that. I mean, building a business, you know, you have to do things that you don't like to do. You have to take the garbage out, right? You may not like to do it, but you have to do it, right? So you have to stay disciplined. You have to do the things that aren't inspiring or the fun stuff, right? So it's like, well, you have this this commitment to the things in your life, like health and wellness and things like that. But then you also have to find discipline, the action side of it. And then you have to work to try and stay balanced throughout your entire life. And there's a whole slew of other thoughts and ideas and things that are kind of, I wouldn't say half-baked, but they're formulated in my mind. But what I think a message, and I think our conversation, which led to hopping on here, was about, is that there's kind of a methodology that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, that if you kind of start with this, then you can go on your own journey, and then you can leverage tools, right? I mean, Tony Robbins always says success leaves clues. The ability to become whoever you want to be and be a vibrant, healthy human being that is, you know, providing abundance for yourself and for others that you touch. So I know that was a little long-winded, but that's kind of like the journey that I've gotten to, that through all these principles led me to a path of what is biogeometry, right? It was my curiosity to listen to a podcast that I got to hear Dr. Abraham Karim. And then all of a sudden I'm like, this is interesting. So then what did I do? I investigated it. And then I started applying it to myself. And then I started seeing how it impacted my life. And then I started talking about it to other people. Right. And that's how you learn about it. Right. Yeah. So that process, that thing is actually kind of simple, doesn't cost money. It's all inside of you. It just requires, actually kind of just starts with awareness. Right. And then just, you know, your process to take action, to manifest and try things. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want my children to know, is that you need to be curious. Just because a textbook says that this is true doesn't mean it is. Like, especially when it comes to like science, you know, like math, 2 + 2 is equal to 4. That's a methodology that we look at, right? But like science, right? Philosophy, why are we here? All that kind of stuff. I don't think anyone really has a true clue. It's just a process of investigation and curiosity that's going to lead to more insight as we go along, you know?
100%. Yeah. There's just like so much projection And if you're not on this journey and you're not committed, then you're going to project your crap on other people, whether that's in a textbook or in a post or a comment or even a nonprofit that you start. A lot of people project that kind of stuff, right? Like you and I know some of the organizations that claim to make sure, you know, something horrible like sex trafficking isn't happening, and they're actually the organizations that are doing it. And so I don't know, just the projection thing came in really strong when you were talking about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a friend of mine said that something that you believe in, but you get really, really angry. So it's like a person that you despise is actually a reflection in the mirror, right? Like there's something inside that person or that belief or whatever that's about you, right? God bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%. And when people start to realize that, like you see the world through such a different lens, right? So it's like, I mean, for me, like I can definitely have more compassion. But then when I look back at points in my life where I was like angered or triggered or whatever, and sometimes it would be like in a very physical way, like I would literally have like physical sickness to my stomach hearing certain things, and I'm like, oh, that's a projection of like something that like I'm dealing with, or someone projected onto me in a traumatic way. And I was like, oh, isn't that like so interesting? And thankfully we have these beautiful bodies that like are always trying to communicate things with us. And again, like your awareness piece is so huge, because if, I mean, we can put a number to it if you want, but if X amount of people increased their self-awareness, inner and outer, by X amount, where would the state of the world be in 5 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, awareness, if there's anything you're going to do, practice more awareness, right? You have your self-awareness, your internal, and then you have your external awareness, because it's actually really important too, because it can affect your internal, right? But it's like your thoughts, right? Your sensations, your feelings, right? Your actions, and your environment, right? If you look at those things, you'd be really surprised that you could just practice some simple journaling and kind of write down whatever it is was going on in those scenarios, or just like journal for the day and look at what happened, look what happened. You're going to see repetitive thought process. You can tie that and see what your environment was, right? I mean, I'm a big and I'm bad at it because I was really addicted to technology and addicted to blue light stuff, right? And I know some people would be yelling at me for not wearing my blue light glasses right now, and having my red lights on in the background. But just your environment alone can impact everything. Like it's a factor. Right. So what you're surrounding yourself, the people that you surround yourself with, like, but the beautiful thing is like change isn't necessarily really hard, right? If you are aware of what you want to change or there's a problem, right? And then you got to find a level, something to be committed to, right? And I think that that's what people struggle with, is people just go through life not, they live by their calendars, they live by a very reactionary life to what is being put in front of them, right? So taking out the concept of like learning something or being told something, it's like we're so instant connection, like everyone is so connected, like I can reach out to you immediately and get a hold of you. We're not living in a world where it was like, if I wanted to talk to someone down the street, like I at one time had to walk or horse or something, you know what I mean? Like that's how that was going to work. Well, nowadays it's like, forget it. I can talk to someone in Japan right now. It's like, it's crazy. So I think that because of just the fast pace, everybody is just so reactionary that they never just take the time to say, wait a second, what's going on? Right? What's going on here? Right. And if you just do that, you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see things that you can maybe then start to focus on. Right. And one of the things that was a big aspect of the business of Arcus with Salesforce consulting was a crawl, walk, run approach. And I apply that to my life. Right. I think that and you would know this through, you know, the brain training and our knowledge of it, like when you want to make a big change, it like the fear, like it could blow your mind, right? And you just get paralyzed by all the things that your mind's going to come up and tells you you can't do it, right? But if you could break something down to a small piece that you can fit in a real small time piece in your day, your mind's going to be like, all right, you know, sure. And that's how I've done everything in my life, right? Like, and my latest one is I got away from the cryo, you know, getting into the cold for the last couple of years. And I always primarily did it with like cold shower type stuff.
Yeah.
Like Wim Hof and things like that. But now I actually got myself like a cold plunge. And I was like, I bought myself a cheap one because I'm not going to go crazy. I need to see that I'm committed to it and disciplined in it before I would give myself any luxuries of it and save time. But I got it and I was like, all right, all I'm doing is I'm committing to getting into it once and I'm going to see what happens. And I went in, I sat for 3 or 4 minutes in 50-degree water and I got out of it. And oh my God, like I had a dopamine rush that was everything that anyone who does it, from the Wim Hofs to the, you know, you name it, the health gurus out there of the world who preach it. It was like, oh my God, like it just felt amazing. And now all of a sudden, like I'm 2 weeks in and it's like, I'm addicted to it. Like I want to get in it. I want to do it longer. I want to get it done. And I was able to do it because I was able to start small and realizing that there's a reason why. I did enough research on it. I took the time to investigate why would it be beneficial for me. Mm-hmm. Right. And then I took the plunge to say, well, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Right. And I think that if people are willing to try stuff, they're just able to just notice areas of improvement and just take that one small step and whatever that is, and know that it's not like one thing is going to solve it or that it's going to be right for you. I think that's a big thing, right? Because I got certified. So during COVID, one of the things I decided to do was to double down on kind of my education, right? I became a certified through the Amen Clinic, right? In brain health. Yay. And that's how we met. I became a holistic HLC1 holistic life science coach through the Czech Institute. I've now gone through level 2. And I also got certified in meditation. And I've taught meditation to people. And my biggest thing about meditation is like the concept is about self-awareness, right? We all know that it's about being still and being in a place where, you know, you try to quiet the mind, right? Mm-hmm. But what meditation means to you now versus what it's going to mean to you maybe 6 years from now is going to be completely different, right? But starting a process, which really is, and I've actually, during COVID, I actually put a video out where it was meditation helps you be able to respond to your situations instead of react to your situations, right?
Love that.
And I have found that's been really true, but I don't ever preach or tell someone that this particular type of meditation is right for you, or you need to do it exactly this way. You know, it's like, no. I want to kind of give you my story. I want to kind of give you some tools and how to start, because I need that with someone who has ADHD, right? Like I need instruction, because even in the simplest of instructions, I may still have 1,000 questions, right? Because it's just not, we know how that works, right? But I give some basic stuff and I was like, hey, you know, let's walk through it. What do you think? Right. And then you go on your journey, and then it's really on you now to say how you do it. And I can tell you, for me, I couldn't sit for 5 minutes without being timer. Is it over? Like, you know what I mean? But it was a crawl, walk, run thing, right? I was going to do 5 minutes a day. And I set no expectation about what was the outcome going to be. And I was like, I committed to how long I was going to do it for, which I said I was going to do it for a month. Right. And now I could sit and meditate for an hour. Right. I meditate sitting on a bench or in a pool or in a car. Right. Well, that's an involvement for me. Right. But it may not be for you. Right. Or someone else. But is it serving me? Yes. But it's not because some guru told me to do it. Right. It's because I heard that there might be some wisdom here. Let me investigate it. right? Give it a shot.
I love that. Because there's so many things, and like you might start doing meditation a certain way and then like decide to change it up, but it's all about like you figuring it out for yourself. And that's where the investigation comes in, and then just like the intuition too, because I mean, the cryotherapy, there's, you know, one famous dude that does it. So it's not the best example, but like there's so many people out there that are like meditation experts and claim this is the best method and da 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 da. And it's like, you got to definitely find the one that's best for you, for sure.
Is it serving you at this time in your life, right? It comes back to awareness of your own self, right? Someone who's going 100 miles an hour, who's, you know, suffering from disease and illness, like, would you start with meditation as your journey to health? Probably not.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to look at, again, this is where it's like this holistic awareness pieces, right? That's why like as far as I'm concerned, like ABC's life, it starts with awareness. You have to be aware of yourself and your experiences, and take a piece of a snapshot, right? Take a snapshot of what happened today, right? You know, you eat some piece of food, right? And oh yeah, like it gave you a rush, emotion, you know, they talk about like emotional eating, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I ate something. And it's like, pay attention 30 minutes later and see how you feel. You know, I started doing that. I started noticing like if I ate certain foods, my nose would start running.
Oh wow.
I never even realized it. I'm like, I'm having a reaction.
Yeah.
But then my solution wasn't also like, all right, I just don't want to eat that anymore. I like that. Well, okay. Well, maybe there's something else going on. Right. So that's what, you know, so it's like the curiosity never ends. Right. And that's why, to me, that's such a big thing, is that you need to always have a beginner's mindset, right? We look at children and look at them as maybe like they need parents to guide them, but there's so much wisdom in children, right? There's a reason why they're born as, you know, just kind of a big blob of fat kind of thing, right? Because their brains aren't developed yet, right? So it's like, as things happen, that all that inside of them now starts to go to the brain. But as that's happening, they're moving, they're committed, right? Children, babies, they're committed to walking. They don't give up, right? They have 100% commitment to their curiosity, and they're learning about anything. They're like that cat of yours, just doing instinctually what feels right. Like, there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah.
We need to go back to that. We need to go back to our childlike behaviors and being curious, and not letting someone slap you on your hand, like, you're old enough now, you're an adult, like, let your hand get burnt by the fire for a second and learn really what that is and why. Right. Because my biggest mistakes, like I consider myself lucky in certain ways, because certain things that happened to me, like, I would not want other people to experience. Obviously everything happens for a reason, but like, I made decisions, and if I would have had guidance or some kind of insight, it might have impacted me, right? And that's where, you know, I feel like I'm lucky in some ways, because in any moment, someone can go in one direction or another. An impulse can go one way or the other, right? And I feel like there was enough around me in my environment, my relationships and whatnot, that it led me down a good path, because I know I could have gone down a bad path, you know?
For sure. I love that. I love your story. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for letting me share it.
Yeah. So I wanted to go to the awareness thing just because it's like, you know, I am about decluttering. I've worked with people, and when, you know, they started doing some journaling when we started working together. And then by the time I like get to their place or whatever, and then I leave, they're like, I feel like I just journaled like a lot of stuff because you made me aware. And I was talking about this with my friend this weekend, and I was like, yeah, it's crazy. You go into someone's house and I just point to something, or sometimes I pick it up and touch it, and I'm like, how does this make you feel? And they say something like, it reminds me of my grandfather. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like, what was your relationship like with him? Not very good. He is very abusive. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to have this energy in your house? And they're like, They literally just have to like pause and they're like, whoa, like I didn't even think about that. And it's like everything about the decluttering process is literally just about awareness. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I think that's like so important when we're talking about inner and outer awareness, because just the energy of all of our stuff and then our attachment to it is affecting us whether or not we like it. And especially when we're talking about our health, you know, when people are like, there's just one thing to do for the rest of my life, what is it? And it's like, I can't tell you just what. But I say, like, drink more water, be kind to yourself because your body is mostly water, and stay away from sugar. Like those are like the big three. And they're like, oh, that seems like really simple. Like I think I can do that. And then they realize that it's harder to do that because sugar is extremely addicting. And it takes a while for you to be kind to yourself consistently.
It does. It does. And I think that, you know, the one thing that you're talking about that just, you know, hits home is that it's not all about what you see, right? It's what you feel. It's the sensations in your body, right? Your brain and your body and who you are is pretty stinking amazing for what it absorbs and what it could be telling you, right? And we're just not conscious of it. You know, like I look at the 4 levels of learning, right? Which are unconsciously incompetent. That's the worst to be, right? Because you're not even remotely competent or know about what is it that you need to learn how to do, right? Then there's consciously incompetent, which is that's the awareness part, right? You now practice so that you know, you're like, wait, I want to do this, right? I have an understanding. Oh, I'm making myself sick by staring at screens all day, right? Then you become consciously conscious, right? So I'm a big sports person. So, you know, when you look at someone out there right now, I mean, the NBA playoffs are going on, right? But if you have someone like a Steph Curry, right? Steph Curry's not thinking about dribbling a basketball. It's just natural. He's not thinking about shooting a basketball. It's just natural. Well, he's practiced. Well, at one point, he wanted to dribble a basketball. He was conscious about his incompetence, and then he became consciously competent, right? Which means he was looking down and he was pounding on the ball. Eventually,
it's such a funny thing to think about,
right? Right.
Yeah.
So he was doing that, but then he got to a place where he was like unconsciously competent, right? And that's that like zone, right? Where when people talk about being in a zone in a game, right? First off, all that preparation is getting you there, right? The fact that you dribbled the basketball a billion times without looking at it. You've shot a basketball a billion times without looking at it. But now you're in tune with the game has slowed down for you. Now all of a sudden you have mentally, physically, spiritually, all of it in the moment. That's when we see greatness, right? And everyone's in awe of a Michael Jordan or Steph Curry in more recent times or LeBron James or whatever, right? We're like, oh my God, he was in the zone. And it's like, yeah, well, it took the discipline and his commitment to that to get there, right? It's a balanced approach because it ain't just one thing. But when he got there, he was in tune with that environment. He was so locked in that he was able to do it. And I think that to what, you know, you said, it's like you go into someone's house and you see all these different things. They're not even remotely aware of what's going on there, right? There could be bad wiring in the house too that's making them sick. Or
oh my gosh, yeah.
Feeling horrible.
Being close to the towers, like all that stuff also.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of research coming out about, you know, cell service and 5G. There's some crazy books that I've read that are just interesting stuff that make you, you know, you just wonder. And tying back to like, you know, biogeometry, all about energy, right? So it's like, if we are energy and all this stuff, and there's all this stuff going on, right? These electromagnetic waves that are just kind of coming through and going through your body and this, that, and the other. Well, some of them may not be good, right? They may not be good for you in any way.
Yeah.
You may be serving a purpose in some way, technologically, but it may not be serving you health-wise, right? Or you may need to mitigate it in some way, shape, or form, right? But one of the other points that when you're talking about you know, there was something on a person's that would represent their grandfather, this, any other, interestingly enough. So, you know, my curiosity may lead me in some crazy ways that someone would consider crazy. Like, well, wait a second, how do you go from being a, you know, entrepreneur in like a tech, you know, kind of company to like past life regression analysis, which is where it's like, you know, it's like, where did that go from, right? Well, you know, as I'm being curious and I'm starting to see things, I'm like, oh, I started doing all these things for my health and my mental health. And, you know, I started seeing, you know, crazy change. I mean, during COVID alone, through the doubling down on all of it, like I lost 50 plus pounds. I got my neck taken care of. I had all this stuff. I was as healthy as I've ever been. But I also started to realize like I kind of felt like I was doing enough that I warranted me to be able to levitate. And I wasn't able
We'll
to,
get there. We will get there one
right?
day. It's gonna happen.
But that being said, I felt like there was still something going on. Right. And I've done Native American ceremonies and stuff, which have been amazing. Those are awesome experiences. I mean, again, this is like just traveling and stuff like for me, like this is, you know, journeys and cool stuff to get introduced to. But I still felt that there was something going on. And I got to work with Angie Check, who is Paul Check's wife through the Check Institute. Amazing person, and just one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And she walked me through a past life regression. And I'm not going to go into specifics of that, but it impacted me in such a, I was a completely different person after that.
Yeah, I think about that day that you told me about it, like every time I see you, I'm like, wow, like how fucking cool was that he just like that completely different perception.
Yeah. And listen, that involvement is not for everyone. It, you know, someone can listen to that and be like, what are you talking about? Right. Based on religious beliefs and other stuff, whatever. Right. But like, I went in with a beginner's mindset. I went in and said, hey, I've read enough books on this and continue to do so to say, hey, this is worth a shot. And I'll tell you what, my meditation work allowed me to get into a calm mind. And I think I got a lot deeper and was able to do some extra stuff because of all that I did. That led to that. So it was like, you know, meditation led me to a past life regression. Like, whoa, okay, that's kind of interesting. And oh my God, physiologically, I am a different person. I don't have, you know, I think a lot of us can say that we get triggered by things and don't understand why, like certain things that we can't point to in our life, at least now, that it's in our awareness that this happened and why do I react this way, or why do I think these recurring thoughts, or whatever the case might be. Some of those that I were puzzling me and why I went down the path are gone. Ooh,
amazing.
Right. So, you know, again, I think that the main thing that I want people to in anything that they do, right, whether it be career, whether it be their health, whether it be their relationships, whatever, is just take a couple extra minutes just to practice awareness. Right. I mean, just going back to that concept of, you know, just look at it. You know, you have no idea the impact that it can have on you when you start to either realize that maybe you're in a toxic relationship, or you're surrounding yourself with bad eggs, right? People who are sucking energy from you, right? Like, you know, people may be wanting things from you and are staying in your life for that reason, and that's like actually draining you. Like you'll start to see that those things will start to come into your awareness, you know, as you practice it, right? And then eventually you'll be able to make better decisions about the things that you do. And then when you start building some momentum, we know what happens when momentum builds. It compounds, right? And it just kind of grows out, right? And you know, all you ask is just to take that first step. And you know, there's many ways to do it. And the beautiful thing that of the stuff that I've learned and done really doesn't really cost much money at all. Like that's the beautiful part, right? Like, you know, it's not a supplement that you have to take. You have to pay $100 a month for it, right? It's not a you know, I mean, you buy pencil and paper, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of foundational health principles, right? Like sleep, hydration, things like that, like really don't cost a lot of money, you know. You know, sleep shouldn't cost you money. I don't think. I mean, granted, you have a house you can sleep in, but sleeping in nature probably is better. But yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful part. And I think, for the children out there and whatnot, it's like, let's make sure that we teach how to learn things, how to be curious, how to investigate, right? We don't need to come at it with anger, because I think that's our biggest problem in the world today, right? Is like everyone has their beliefs, everyone thinks that their ideas are the best and that the other one's wrong, not realizing that there's wisdom probably in all views, whether it be political sides or countries and stuff like that. It's like, hey, we all probably kind of want the same thing, right? Unless you're drunk on power and money and whatever. And there definitely are people who've gotten to that place, but I think in the deep rooted hearts of everyone, we're all about love and connecting with others. And if you take the time out to realize it, you can see that you're going to be much happier when you're living from that place versus not.
100%.
As the kitty cat just gave me
he's like loving this. He's like, see, if you guys would just listen to me and do the things I tell you to do, your lives would be great. And I agree with everything that Larry is saying. That's my guess at what he's thinking.
I'm wondering, is he here because of my presence through the screen, or
100%?
Mommy, I don't know. We'll see.
No, it's definitely because of you. Oh, he tells me all the time he's an ascended master and he's been with me for hundreds of lifetimes and he's my protector, and so he's telling me when he likes the energy and he does it. And today we've had quite a few beautiful calls with people, more than we normally have, like more Zooms than we normally have in one day. And he's just been like planted right in front of me. But now that you put him on the spot, he's gone.
Of course.
It's like, I don't do it for the fame.
No, definitely not for the fame.
So funny. Well, the episode I recorded earlier this week was actually about his last little appointment of how he was doing.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks.
So funny.
Yeah, animals are fascinating.
They're the best.
Jealous. I'm kind of jealous of them in some ways, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Because they just do things instinctually. I always said, like, being a dolphin sounds awesome. Like, coming from
my God.
perspective, it's like you're with your friends swimming around together. You're kind of indestructible, and you're just swimming in the ocean all the time.
My friend literally called me a dolphin this weekend, and I was like, oh my God, thank you so much for saying that.
Appreciate it.
I'm hoping, at some point I'll be able to be a dolphin.
No. One of the things I wanted to make sure I said on here was I wanted to thank you. In addition to just being a good friend and always been there for me as a sounding board, and also in my journey of my studies and things. You know a ton and are a great knowledge bank for the brain and other stuff. And but I think one of the things that I'm starting to see a repeating theme for me is that, as I said, COVID started making me think about kind of coming out of the
spiritual closet.
Spiritual closets, great way to and just start to maybe share a little bit more about what I've done and being a little more comfortable in that space. And it's not an easy journey to do, but I think the anxiety of even coming on here, I think is a sign of it was like an anxious excitement. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that, like going back to awareness of like, that's something you should probably do, right? Like, that's a good thing to do. And I thank you for encouraging me to share my story with people, share my story here, and to start to put that energy out into the world. Because I think that that's what really is inside of me and I'm passionate about. I set no goals of wanting to start some kind of company or anything like that, but I think that I need to use the most prized possession I have, which is time, right? That's probably the real money that we all have, right? Is time.
Exactly.
And start to spend some of that, maybe a lot of it, on helping others, right? Because I think that I'm obviously still learning and evolving and growing, and things that I believe 2 years ago is changed, and it's constantly evolving. But I think that being vulnerable and me putting myself out there, I think is going to resonate with individuals. And I just want to thank you for helping, encouraging me to kind of really formulate my thoughts about how I've gotten to where I am today. And what the future can look like. Because I think it's an interesting time to be alive. And I think that there's a lot that we can do, but I think it's really going to require us communicating more deeply, being more aware of ourselves and our surroundings. And I'm starting to see trends out there with a lot of people who are starting to do that. And I think I need to follow suit and do it. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Yeah, you've always been a leader. It's just in a little bit of a different sense now.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've always thought he was just like the business badass guy. And you're just like, since I've met you, it's just been like such a beautiful transformation of what I always saw in you. You just didn't like visualize everything exactly like you do now, but it's a huge blessing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good thing is I'm actually starting to believe that in my own self. And I think that's the beauty, right? That's, where I'm supposed to be right now. I've made tons of mistakes. I've made great decisions. I mean, there's lots of things, right? But when you start to see that confidence in yourself, then you really start to build that momentum and can start to manifest it and share it with others, right? And now I'm almost looking at it as I'm doing a disservice by not, right? And that's also a driver at this stage of the game, right? And when I look at my children and I talk to them and whatnot, I think in a lot of the things that I would believe or think, whether it be health related and whatnot, I would not necessarily say, because it may go against a general norm of ideas. Nothing crazy, but like I would just be hesitant. Like, it's like, oh, I'm not the expert, like whatever, but I kind of believe this. Now I'm sharing myself. I'm sharing myself more with my children and kind of expressing what is it that I do, and whatnot, like red light therapy, right? Like I'm a firm believer in that. It's a artificial light that's helping mimic what the sun does. And when I started to recently share that out, people have used it and they've seen great results. And it's like, oh my God, right? But that's not something that's like a mainstream thing. I mean, you are seeing some of these different things, like certain lights out there and stuff that are starting to make a little bit in this holistic lifestyle realms, but it's not a mainstream concept of healing and its power, right? Or biogeometry or past life regression and things like that.
All of the things. Well, I'm excited you mentioned the light thing because, I'm a sun worshiper. And the more that you learn about light frequency, high vibration, like all of that stuff, the more you realize that it kind of can be that simple, right? So like there's the blue light, which is bad. And then there's the other types of light, which are like so helpful and healing. And to me, my hands are tingling while I'm talking about it. It's like, it's almost like the light in the dark. You know what I mean? Like it's just very interesting to think of it that way.
Well, it's funny you're saying that, because like the thing that I am studying right now is really rooted in a light story. Dr. Jack Cruz, who I is one of my gurus who I listen to. He's breaking things down, and I can't even remotely say that I'm truly understanding it. But the sun, I mean, to me, I'm starting to believe that it is the most important thing if you could do is make sure that you get yourself in the sun for as long as possible.
Yeah. So I was talking about each of my friends this weekend because we were at the lake, and one of them is pregnant with twins. She's like really pregnant now, so she's pretty big. And I was telling them about Dr. Jack Cruz, which I mean, I was like sharing all his stuff during COVID because I was just like loving it, but also just like cackling about it because it seems so simple the way he explains things. But I was like, yeah, I was like, I wonder how the babies will like you like being in the sun. And so she laid in the sun without sunblock. And she said that this is the first night in months that, because she's having twins, that the babies both slept through the whole night. And it wasn't that much because she's super pale and can't be in the sun that long, but just a little bit gave them enough to like regulate. And that's them being, you know, little fetuses. They're not even like out yet.
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy is, you know, I haven't put sunblock on me probably in 10 years. And I just, the thing for me is that it's necessary for life as sun, and there's really, like, we know what can happen when we put things on our body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I believe there's like a patch that you can regulate menstrual cycles by putting a patch on your skin. Like, I think there's like
Nobody
that.
thinks that's weird. It's
Well,
so weird.
but the point of the wisdom of that, right? Which is like,
Yeah.
wait a second, I can put something on skin and it can impact a process in the human body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that mean for everything else? Right. So if I put a chemical on my body, what does that mean? Right. And listen, there's that, you know, that's a topic that I know is somewhat sensitive when it comes to sunblock and stuff, but it's just my personal belief that I'm just not going to put something on my system. And when I feel the sun getting too beat on me, I go in the shade, put a hat on, I put my shirt on, like, you know, like that's what I do. But what I can say is I love being in the sun, you know.
Yeah.
Let's not, I
And you're a
mean,
very good looking man. You don't have wrinkles and all the other shit. People are gonna be like, if you don't wear sunblock, you're gonna blah 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 blah. And it's like, nope. Same with me. Like people think I'm in my 20s. I hate
oh,
sunblock.
I've actually had people since I started doing, you know, because the wintertime sun is not all that great, especially at
Yeah.
the latitude that I'm at.
Yeah.
I started doing the red light therapy and all this other stuff, and I actually had people tell me, they're like, "Oh, your skin looks really good, and you know, you look young," and like all that stuff. And I don't think they would have said that to me set of years prior. I mean, you know, because things can go off the rails kind of quickly, but you know, I just, nature nature is amazing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
nature doesn't lie. So I just don't see the, or believe the science of saying that we need to put something on our body to that big ball in the sky is doing harm to us in any capacity. I mean, granted, there always can be too much, but I think it's kind of like saying drinking too much water. The odds of you
Mm-hmm.
getting there are kind of slim.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, again, like these little things, you know, it's one little topic of a thing, but you know, something like that could also impact your health a lot, right? You know, one thing that is, I don't think should be controversial is that, you know, when COVID was going on, it was like, you know, go uh stay in your house. Like, what? Don't, you know, it's like, what, like, we need to exercise, like, you need to be healthy, like, you know, like, do. And it was kind of looked at as like, no, 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 whatever. And I just, that didn't resonate with me, you know. And I'm not gonna sit here and say like, you know, here's the ways COVID is, or this, and the other, and how to handle it, and this and the other. That's not my area of focus, nor is it something that I want to dive deep into. But the reality was, it just didn't make sense to me, right? And that's the thing, right? It was my challenge of it. It was my commitment to my curiosity, because something didn't make sense. And I actually think, you know, kind of talking about back to ADHD and mental health and this and the other, I think the one thing that ADHD is a bit of a superpower for me is that it really takes me a long time to understand something. So I kind of have to dig deep.
Yeah, I love
Right?
that.
So I have to ask more questions, right? Sometimes I have to read a page in a book like, you know, 5 or 6 times to like pick it up, right? And common sense things don't come easy to me, right? I actually don't like common sense because it's like, it's not real common to me.
Exactly.
But that being said, you know, it's like, you just investigate it, just ask yourself some questions, like, does this really make sense for me? Like, how do I really feel, right? And it could be it's anything in life. You know, so I actually, the thing about reading was my ADHD. I never read anything. And I think I've said this, I think when I was on with you the last time, I think I mentioned this.
Yeah.
Like I knew when I started studying entrepreneurship and sales and this and the other, it's like, well, what do people who run businesses and successful people do, right? What is their thing? And a lot of it was like, oh, a lot of reading, and I was like, I don't read ever, not even for fun stuff. And I was like, I guess I got to do it, right? So I was like, I wanted to go down the path. Well, I did a crawl, walk, run. I did 5 pages a day. 14 plus years later, I'm still reading 5 pages a day and never missed a day.
Love it.
Right. Well, what happens? I built momentum. I started getting, addicted to it. I started seeing how it made me feel. It actually allowed me to remove the outside world. And to me, it's a level of meditation reading, because it's like I can focus on something, right? I'm focused, that's what you kind of doing in meditation, right? You're just kind of like sitting there kind of focused and everything around you, right? Well, now I'm zoning in on a book and I'm reading it and I'm letting it kind of take me away. And when I pick my head up, I wasn't thinking about where I had to take the kids next, or what I was going to eat for dinner, or, what fire drill I had to handle, 5 minutes later. Right. And I found it to be therapeutic. I found it to be like, now I gained knowledge. It made me more curious about different things. I mean, the tenfold of learning to read and doing a small amount was amazing. Right. The return has been insane. So
I love it. Yeah, I'm reading Manifestation Mastery by Christina Rice, also known as Christina the Channel, who I'm like super obsessed with. And again, like have been wanting to read it for a while and just like didn't put it on my Amazon cart for whatever reason. And now I'm reading it and it's like my obsession. And I feel like I'm meditating, visualization, and learning all at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm with it.
Yeah. It's all good stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at yourself and you say, am the things am I doing, helping me or hurting me? Right. And if you practice a little bit of self-awareness, the answers are right there, right in front of your face.
Exactly.
Right? And then when you start to remove also like the like I was all about just reading like about self-help stuff. Right. And I was like, I gotta keep reading that. And it was like I had to always finish a book. And even if I wasn't liking it, and I was really just reading 5 pages a day because I wasn't liking it, I had to complete it. So it's like when I removed all these beliefs that I needed to do this, that, and the other, I was actually able to mix things up. I, did some fun reading and read a biography of someone, right? Or read a story, just a story for a story's sake, right? Like, why not? Right? Like, let's see how that is. And then like some, books that I've read, I'm just like, oh my God, right? And now I've actually completed, yay me, books I did not like. I literally put down and said, I am not feeling this.
I love it. Yeah, that's one. I know, like, because some things, I mean, I tell people all the time, you could even like read a book that has the same message by like 20 different authors, and like you might just not resonate with one author and one you really resonate with. And they're saying the same thing. It's so important to just like be okay tuning into what, but also who.
Yeah.
Feels good too.
And also rereading a book later, right? Can give you a totally new different perspective. Right. I think it's, it's like, could give you a new perspective. Like I even just started watching a television show that I never thought of. I'm like, oh, watch it. I watched it already, but then I realized I'm like, wait a second, like that show made me feel a certain way. Why don't I watch it again? And I started watching it and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Like I'm like locked in and it's fun. And, and I just, in the grand scheme of it all, it's like, we put so much like rules around everything, it's just like, no, like I want to feel good. I want to be vibrant. I want to connect with people. I want to see new things, but then I want to enjoy things that I enjoy. Like it's all about that. That's where like that balance thing, like to kind of, I guess, maybe rapidly go up. I look at like life as you're riding the surfboard of on the waves of life, right? You're going to fall off, right? But sometimes you're going to have the ride of your life where it's going to go for God knows how long. But there's no way you're going to have a ride of your life if you don't get on the board. Okay. Or, right, you don't take care of yourself and do the things that you need to do. Right. So it starts with being aware. It starts with, being committed. It starts with, your discipline and being balanced, and then being rooted in your connection to what, are the laws of nature, right? Being hydrated and sleeping good and all that stuff. And if you can stay grounded and rooted in all that, odds are you're going to be able to ride many waves and experience new levels of it. And you're going to feel amazing when you walk out of that water, right? And that's kind of how I just look at it all. And, if you just stay true to kind of those core fundamentals, sky's the limit of where it takes you, and, what wave you want to take and what environment and what colors you want to be on, or all that's all up to you. That's your choice. Right. But if you just stay rooted in the core fundamentals of it, you're going to have a really good chance to succeed and enjoy yourself in the process.
Love it. Amazing. So I'm going to put some info below of how people can find you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share in closing?
No, I think again, this was like an amazing, I mean, we've been talking for a good while here, I kind of get lost in it. And it's just, I just want to say that, everything you need is inside of you. It's good to have people around you to help you with that, right? Which is why I enjoy, coaching and mentoring people and things of that nature. And we should feel vulnerable enough. Like, the most successful people in the world surround themselves with people who give them advice. They're not narcissistic. They don't sit there and just think they know it all. The ones who think they know it all never really get too far, right? Yeah. It's the ones who know their limits, know their challenges, and are willing to ask for help is what matters. So my big message to everyone, in addition to practicing awareness and the way I look at stuff, is that don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone, or myself, to you, to anyone out there, your friends, your family, right? Get an opinion on something, right? Because it's going to make all the difference in the world. I just know it. Like, to me, that's a universal truth, right? So
for sure,
that would be it. And thank you again for asking me on and having me be a part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And I will see you in a different exciting new space that I can't talk about yet, but I'm excited for that conversation. And if you want to if this was helpful, take a screenshot, tag me, the Home Alchemist, use the hashtag #GetValidated and the hashtag #GetValidatedPodcast. If you post something and tag me and use those hashtags, I will Venmo you $5. And obviously, if you have a topic, if you have something you want to hear my opinion about, and then any of my guests, please feel free to just fill out the form below. But just so grateful that Larry was here with us, and just wishing you well, as Larry always says to me.
Thank you, Fallon. I really appreciate it. Be well.
Love
and
you.
I love everyone else. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.